Today on Detroit Muscle, we're zipping to the modern muscle era and transforming a grocery getter Hemi wagon into a supercharged grocery Gladiator. How are we gonna do it? Let's start with a big bad blower on the top and a high-flowing exhaust out the back. It's the beginning of a two-stage approach to making this wagon into one mean mama. Also, we'll pay a visit to our resident Mopar guru and decode an incredible Dodge discovery. It's a one-of-a-kind Super Bee with a hidden twist that'll knock your socks off.
Ain't no denying it, factory muscle cars are back and badder than ever. Just like in the glory days, the big three are competing for performance and power. Ford, GM, and Mopar are once again waging muscle car war. This 06 grocery getter may be one of the unsung heroes of that war. Dodge Magnum wagons were only around from 2005 to 2008, but they still have a loyal following, and you see a lot of modified versions at car shows.
This RT came from the factory with a 5.7 Hemi, pumping out 345 horse. And just like muscle cars back in the day, well, plenty of power is never enough.
You can't talk about modifying Hemis without using the S word, which stands for supercharging, of course. Edelbrock sure hit a home run with their E14 system for all the modern muscle cars. You get everything you need to take it out of the box and install it under the hood without cutting, welding, or grinding. And it's an American-made design that's all about performance, efficiency, and good looks. Inside is an Eaton 2300 TVS rotor assembly with a full 160 degrees of twist for maximum flow and minimum temperature rise. Edelbrock's inverted intake manifold design keeps the Supercharger quiet and allows for a long, smooth runner path. Whether you do the install yourself or have a pro do it, there are three things you got to do first. Ensure that the car's computer is up to date, then go online and make sure this tuner from the kit is up to date. With that done, you're ready to load up the E14 tune.
Loading the tune is easy as pie. Just plug into the OBD2 port in your car, follow the prompts on the screen, and the tuner does the rest for you.
Now for the real work. We'll start by getting the hood out of the way so it's easier to do our thing in the engine bay. The front wheels come off as well, and so does the fascia.
Perfect. Next, you want to drain the cooling system so that you can remove the radiator for access to the front of the engine. The serpentine belt comes off no sweat, and then we'll pull off the balancer. Now, while we're installing our new balancer, we've got to add a keyway, and they offer a dowel pin to do all this. The reason you have to, well, it's because of that supercharger is being driven by this little pulley. Without it, it could slip on the end of the crankshaft.
The kit comes with this little jig that helps you get your hole drilled. It also includes a reamer to make room for the dowel. While all of this is apart, now's a great time to take care of a couple of things. The front seal is one thing we'll swap out. We're also going to trade out the water pump for a new one from AutoZone because they're readily available, and this is the best chance we'll ever have to change it out.
For the dowel, some green Loctite will help keep it in place. Then we can install our new balancer and pulley. Be sure to torque it back to factory specs. The pulley is held on the balancer by a few bolts, which also get torqued to spec.
Stick around, there's still some tinkering to go to make this Hemi Huffer force some go fast into our grocery Gladiator. Find out how to install headers on a late model Dodge, and you've seen these lift-off hood Mopars before, but pay attention and see why this Super Bee is one of a kind.
Well, with that thing out of the way, we can move on to the fun part of this project, turning this grocery getter into a true Gladiator.
So, Mr. Joe, how in the world have you managed to keep your hands so clean during this whole process?
Well, Tom, it's sort of the wisdom of the ages. Maybe you'll understand someday. Maybe not.
Now, since the break, we've got a few things removed. Now, obviously the intake manifold, and we went ahead and took off the air box as well. And after we get all this stuff cleaned up, we'll be ready to start the reassembly process.
The new serpentine belt can lay loosely in place to start this process, along with the new belt pulleys and cast aluminum bracket, which will be part of the Supercharger accessory drive. Some blue Loctite QUICKSTIX will help keep everything in place for us.
We'll make sure to line up the pin on the back of the tensioner to this hole, not that one. All right, now I just got to slip on this factory belt, push on this big stiff tensioner. Try not to get my finger. There we go. It's a good idea to use a couple of people to lay the blower in place. You don't want to damage it or the engine. That's her, Joe. That's it.
That's it.
Well, we got our Edelbrock Supercharger sitting in place. We're ready to start bolting it down. And I tell you, that thing looks pretty sweet sitting on top of there, Joe.
You got that right. I tell you, I don't know if pretty is the proper word for a blower, but hey, it is.
Our E4 Street version Supercharger comes with a new set of fuel injectors. These things are rated at 52 pounds per hour. We already have them slapped into the new fuel rail. All we have to do is drop it in the manifold.
With the fuel line plugged back in, these little positioning blocks help make sure the drive end of the blower is properly seated and supported. Then we can install the belt.
The pump for the blower's intercooler hides behind the front bumper. The cooler itself mounts in front of our transmission cooler and radiator. The reservoir for the coolant bolts on top of the inner fender, and there you have it. It's pretty sweet.
With the throttle body, airbox, and manifold covers in place, we're just about done up front. However, we do have some serious business to attend to out back. You see, that Supercharger is going to want more fuel, and the kit comes with this high-flow pump that goes in the stock tank.
Still ahead, we go on a Detroit treasure hunt with a Mopar guru and uncover an incredible Super Bee that's worthy of restoration. Stick around to find out why this six-pack pounder is so rare. Then we'll let that wagon breathe with a big flowing exhaust system.
On the borderline between Tennessee and Alabama, there's a salvage yard that might not look much different than your typical outfit if you're just driving by on the highway.
But this is a resting place with a purpose. You see, it's a Mopar mortuary. 60 acres of dead Dodges and Plymouths. And some of them getting pretty rare.
Stevens Performance is the place, and Ted Stevens is the man to know if you're on the hunt for anything Mopar, including knowledge.
So it goes without saying, when it comes to Mopar Detroit treasures, well, there aren't any better than Ted Stevens. So he invited us down here to check out one he couldn't resist bringing back home to Alabama.
Yeah, this particular car, well, it's got a good bit of history attached to the VIN number of it.
Let's go in. It's not out here.
That's right.
One of the original members of the cartoony Mopar Speed Club, known as the Scat Pack. This is a '69 Dodge Super Bee.
Those two cool words on the side, that aggressive scoop, and these four hood pins, they tell a story, don't they?
Yep, lift-off hood. The engine option or package was available on Roadrunners and Super Bees in 1969. It was the first 446 pack cars. They're available with a 4-speed or automatic. They all came with 410 Dana rear ends, engines of 440 cubic inch with 3 2-barrel Holley carburetors. Breeze through the scoop through a special air cleaner. Designed to be a cost-effective replacement or a substitute for a Hemi, which was considerably more expensive.
Did you make these hood pins?
Yeah, out of a coat hanger.
Yeah, this option definitely didn't have a whole lot of convenience to it, did it?
No, and hence the term liftoff. The hood, you had to put it somewhere, and a lot of these cars were ordered with vinyl tops, so you wouldn't scratch the roof all up when you put the hood on there.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So when it comes to decoding a Super Bee like this, I guess you start with the VIN number. What's that going to tell you?
Well, the VIN number will tell you the engine code on the car, which is an M on an A12 car. It was the only B body that carried an M code in 1969 on a B body car. After the VIN number, you'd look at the data plate out here, which is, you see our A12 code here for the A12 package. And then the body's stamped in a couple different places with a sequential number off the VIN, stamped on the backside of the radiator support here, and then it's stamped again on the left trunk gutter.
So this lets you know you got what you thought you got.
Right. Okay, here's the some of the drivetrain components out of the car. I'm going to show you guys what to look for if you're trying to make sure the car's numbers matching. This is the original engine block. This is going to be the passenger side. Passenger side will have the casting date on it as well as the casting number. And here is what we're really looking for. This is going to be the sequential VIN number of the car, which will match the VIN plate on the car itself. On the transmission, we have a pad right here that will have a repeat of that sequential number on there. That indicates that these two parts actually came in this car. They are a little worse for wear, but I think we can bring them back.
Crank and all, huh?
Crank and all.
So, Ted, what was the original purpose of putting those numbers on the engine?
Well, the original purpose was warranty. Showed that the engine and transmission came in the car to a technician that might be working on the car at a dealership or something like that. Keep people from swapping the motors out, put something else in there and taking it back to the Dodge store to get it fixed when it wasn't their fault. An interesting point on this car is, according to all the registries, this is the last liftoff hood car that Chrysler made.
Which is a very interesting coincidence because sitting right next to that 69 Super Bee is a 70 Super Bee, which is the last 446 pack to go in one in 1970. Talk about your matching set.
So in your opinion, what kind of value does that add to the car?
Well, as far as collectability, a lot of times the first and last of anything might be considered of a little more value than all the ones in between, but in the long run, it's worth what somebody's willing to pay for it.
And that also goes for the hard-to-find original components that help make a six-pack car what it is. They have a special intake, carbs, distributor, air cleaner. The wheels are Mopar H codes, which, by the way, does not stand for Hemi. It stands for heavy duty. This is just scratching the surface of the big old pile of specific parts that you would need for an accurate restoration. So I gotta ask, what's your plans for this big green monster?
I think we'll do a proper restoration on it with the orange peely paint and all the date-coated parts and make it look like it did the day it rolled off the transport truck in 1969.
Well, that sounds cool. I'm not going to ask to be the first one to drive it, but maybe third, fourth, fifth. I'd even go sixth if you're all right with that.
We'll talk about it.
I'll be 7.
Okay.
After the break, we'll get to work on that exhaust system, which is going to let that blower breathe. Headers, cats, mufflers, and some handsome tails are going to set it off.
Okay, we're back on the job and back under the Magnum. With our new E4 Supercharger at work, the Hemi is going to make 100, maybe even more extra horsepower. But why stop there? We can free up some extra ponies with a better flowing exhaust. That is, after we get this old stuff out of the way.
While one side unbolts, the other side has to be cut out since it's welded to the muffler. Some WD-40 makes removing these bolts a lot easier. And Joe's gonna drag out a big old hammer and do his best John Henry impersonation. And I tell you, it's pretty accurate. The cats unbolt from the manifolds, and here's a hairy bit. You have to support the engine and unbolt the motor mount to get the stock manifolds out. Now it's easy to see how much better our new header is going to flow over that restricted little old manifold. Now we decided to go with a set of headers from JBA. They're stainless steel and fully ceramic coated. It's Got an 1 3/4 primary and a 2.5 inch collector. The beauty behind all this stuff is there's no modification except for bolting them in.
Out behind the headers, we'll be using this emissions-ready drop-in kit from Magnaflow. It's built to install in the stock location on this car, making it a snap. After the cats are in, the straight pipes will take us to the back half. Then the muffler goes into place in front of the rear differential. Some more WD-40 will help us slide the brackets into these rubber hangers along the way. The kit comes with Holley stainless tips, which look pretty nice on this old wagon.
There we go. Great looking, great breathing, and great sounding exhaust out behind that Supercharger.
There's one thing superchargers have in common with EFI systems, air conditioning, even your phone charger, and that's they get hungry for voltage. That's why it's a good idea with a project like this to have your battery load tested at a place like AutoZone. Now, they'll do it for free, and that way you'll know whether or not you need a new one for peak performance. Okay, put some fire in the hole.
Well, let's see, maybe first time. Let's see. Not bad.
Not bad at all. Sounds good. Hey, this is a done deal.
Well, not exactly. We still got a little bit more stuff to do this thing, and then we get to go out and take it for a test spin.
Yeah. If you've got a 3-valve mod motor in your 2004 to 08 Mustang, here's how you can get at least 15% more spark out of your ignition. These flamethrower coils from Pertronix are designed for use with their igniter to ignition system, and the result, they say, is more complete combustion through the RPM range. Now they have moisture-proof construction for long life, epoxy molding to resist shock and vibration, and you can get them for 2- and 4-valve mod engines. You can get a set of 8 from Summit Racing for about $260.
If you want the performance of a progressive twin disc clutch without the expense, check out this Science Friction disc from American Powertrain. Smooth initial engagement comes from these raised Kevlar pads that compress to engage the aggressive iron clutch material. It's easy on flywheels and pressure plate surfaces. And it's available in a number of different applications as disc only, or it's available in kits as well.
If you're burning E85 fuel in one of your engines, here's a little tester from Holley that lets you determine the percentage of ethanol to gasoline you have. You simply pour in water up to the first line of the tester, then pour in a sample of your E85 up to the second line, almost to the top. Now put the cap back on, mix it up a little bit, and let it settle. That separation line in the mixture tells us we're at about 87%. It's a handy little tool to make sure you get the power and efficiency you want, and only costs about $17. Well, guess what? We're out of time. We'll see you next week with another Detroit Muscle.